Welcome to another episode of Africa by Toto, where the rains are always blessed. I'm Tara.
I'm Chuling.
In this episode, we'll be talking about a brief history of stories and music that existed in Aboriginal Australia between 10,000 BCE to 1500 CE. Aboriginal Australian stories back then were collectively referred to as the Dreamtime stories. The meaning behind the name is pretty interesting and thought-provoking. The Dreamtime was a term often used to narrate the lives of Aboriginal Australians, the values and norms they lived by, and also refers to the era during which the universe was believed to be created. In that sense, the Dreamtime stories are different in their own ways from creation stories of other cultures. They mainly describe how living things, humans, and nature came about, and how they interact. The Dreamtime stories reveal a lot about Aboriginal Australians and are preserved through storytelling, song, dance, and art, giving oral history a critical role to play. Specifically in this episode, we will be talking about the story of the rainbow serpent and how it has evolved to be somewhat of a feminist icon. The rainbow serpent is a common myth in many creation stories of various Indigenous Australian communities. However, there are variations to each culture's representation of the serpent. Nonetheless, it is generally believed to be the shaper of the world and to have descended from the stars. There are rock paintings by Aboriginals that depict the rainbow serpent as a massive creature with a snake-like body. There are many interpretations of what the rainbow serpent was. Some Aboriginal Australians believe that rainbows are created when the rainbow serpent travels from one waterhole to another. Most Aboriginals believe that the rainbow serpent's movements created water sources, such as the rivers and lakes through depressions underground. The rainbow serpent is considered to be one of the most powerful legendary beings by Aboriginals. They associate the rainbow serpent with life and destruction through its connection to water. It is also seen as a symbol of creation at the same time, since it physically created paths for water to flow and support the various forms of life on Earth. Despite varying cultures having different representations of the serpent's identity, they still collectively view the rainbow serpent to be the center out of all the other Dreamtime stories. We believe that the rainbow serpent is significant in Aboriginal tradition, but not just because of its contribution to the existence of humanity, but also because of its association with gender and feminism. The rainbow serpent was seen as a symbol of female fertility through its close link with the female body and menstruation. This is related to the myth known as the Wawalak sisters. The story of the Wawalak sisters is, as per usual, varied in different regions. Most accounts agree that two sisters were traveling a long distance when suddenly one of them went into labor. She gave birth to a child in a sacred waterhole, but the blood got the attention of the rainbow serpent. The serpent followed the sisters and waited till they rested, when it swallowed them up. However, an ant bit the serpent, and it vomited out both sisters. This myth, along with how the serpent represented female fertility, has set the foundation upon which fertility rituals in Aboriginal Australia are still being carried out. These rituals involve the mixing of male blood with female menstrual blood to show the ceremonial amalgamation of the sexes. In these rites, women are considered sacred for their ability to reproduce, putting them on the same level as the revered rainbow serpent. Hence, one reason why this Dreamtime story is so important is because the rainbow serpent provides a feminine narrative of history. For the rainbow serpent to be associated with female fertility lends power to femininity. Of course, history has more often than not been written and recorded from the perspectives of males, and as seen in historical accounts, they generally tend to give more credit to male historical figures over the contributions that women have made. It is also useful to note that there are variations of the sex of the rainbow serpent. In some cases, it is represented as a male, some as a female, and others as hermaphroditic or bisexual. This is important as it transcends the usual heterosexual narrative of history that we are all so used to seeing. Thus, this provides us with an alternative view of world history at large, and gives us more insight on what has historically been deemed important. Storytelling therefore played an undeniably important role in Aboriginal Australian culture and history.
Another feature that had its own position in Aboriginal Australian culture and history would be its music. Aboriginal Australian music consisted of a specific complex structure related to tempo and language that was unique to them. This gives us deeper insights on the linguistic features that different Aboriginal groups adopted. This in turn provides grounds for deeper analysis of the culture, since language is an important aspect of almost every culture and can therefore reveal a lot. Not only did Aboriginal Australian communities create music that was specific to their culture, the performance environments and audience were usually limited to their specific regions as well. This shows that the Aboriginal Australians were a closely knit community of individuals who made the effort to reach out to one another and give recognition to their culture, which makes their music an even stronger representation of their culture and their pride in it. Our claim that the Aboriginal Australian community was closely knit is not without any grounds. Aboriginal Australian music was subjected to changes in terms of structure in order to be inclusive of all groups within the community, especially their languages, which suggests that inclusivity within the Aboriginal Australians was very important. Another interesting fact we found about Aboriginal Australian music in the early days was that they were composed based on social and political happenings relevant to that era. This, along with the music structure that were uniquely Aboriginal Australian, made them the only ones who were able to understand and appreciate their music. Hence, the music, besides revealing bits and pieces of Aboriginal Australian culture, also enables us to infer how their lives were in the past from 10,000 BCE to 1500 CE. The music is not unrelated to the Dreamtime stories, such as the Rainbow Serpent. It is not uncommon for traditions and stories to be passed down through the use of song and dance to complement storytelling.
Both folklore and music of Aboriginal Australia from 10,000 BCE to 1500 CE adds value and meaning to history. The existence of the Rainbow Serpent is not forgotten today in Victoria, Australia, where the Rainbow Serpent Festival is held annually. While this festival was initially meant to be an electronic music festival, it now includes spiritual education, music, art, and relaxation. As said on the website, while dancing their dreamings, Aborigines spiritually connect themselves to the land and to the dreamtime. The drumming of feet during the dance draws the earth into dialogue with the dancers, allowing the ceremony to bring the power of the dreaming to life. While the Rainbow Serpent Festival does not specifically address femininity as its namesake does, it still adds to the Rainbow Serpent's significance, and by extension, the significance of oral history.
Oral history gives us, historians and common people alike, a richer understanding of history. While many argue that oral history can be easily disputed due to its unverifiable nature, that in itself is its strength. The fact that different regions can have completely different stories, or sometimes stories that are similar, as in the case of the Rainbow Serpent, shows the intricate links within and among communities. While recording has become one of the easiest things to do in the 21st century, Many people of the past either did not have standardized ways of recording or had little access to recording. Hence, to criticize and dismiss oral history for this lack of formal recording is to unfairly negate the fact that different parts of the world had unique traditions that are significant and just as valid as written history. Thanks for listening to this episode of Africa by Toto, Aboriginal Australia. We hope you've liked it and see you in the next episode.